The Shadow Treasurer, Ted O'Brien, joins me now. Ted O'Brien, welcome to 7:30.
Great to be with you again, Sarah.
Now, on Friday, you described the Roundtable as little more than a bunch of golden tickets for a hand-picked group invited by Willy Wonka himself, Jim Chalmers. If you think it's pointless, why are you going?
So, Sarah, I did say that, and it was part of me making this point. There are 25 people who have been hand-picked who will be in the room over the next 3 days. I see my job as representing the 27 million Australians who are not in that room.
Are you opposed to expertise, Ted O'Brien?
Am I opposed to expertise, did
Correct.
you say, Sarah?
I did.
I don't understand the point of your question, I'm sorry. What do you mean?
Well, 25 hand-picked people, presumably they've been picked for their various expertises. We can see that. Danielle Wood from the Productivity Commission, people from across the economic spectrum. What's wrong with picking experts to discuss the economy?
Well, they're your comments, Sarah, not mine. My real critique here is that you have 27 million Australians who have been experiencing a household recession. Australia has experienced the biggest drop in living standards across the developed world. They're the ones who I'll be representing. As for others in the room, there's no doubt, there's a lot of smart people in the room, and I make no criticism of any one individual, but they are all there representing different vested interests, and that's fine. But I see my role as being there for the Australian people. Many Australian people who have been forgotten by this government, who are struggling. Even as we talk this evening, you'll have small business owners still working their shop. They can't pay their bills. They don't know if they can keep on staff. They're the ones I'm there for, Sarah.
Now, in the run-up to the summit, you also said that the government shouldn't take GST reform off the table. Does that mean that it must be on the table for you when you get back, or when and if you get back into government?
When Jim Chalmers first announced his roundtable, he said all ideas will be on the table. Nothing will be taken off. He's not ruling anything out. My criticism on the GST, Sarah, was all of a sudden GST was out. All of a sudden industrial relations was out. All of a sudden energy is out. I mean, what does that leave? So either the Treasurer is true to his word and everything is on the table, or he's not true to his word. And I think actually the Prime Minister has reined him in, which is why he is not prepared to deal with some of these challenges.
But if you think that it should be on the table in the run-up to the summit, you were saying it should not be taken off the table. Does that mean it should be on the table for you, for a coalition government, if and when you get back into government? And if so, what kind of GST are you thinking about?
Again, Sarah, I'll repeat what I just said before. My criticism...
Don't do that.
Well, you asked me. You're asking me a question in the context of my comments about the roundtable, and it is true, is it not, that the Treasurer promised he would be open-minded, everything would be on the table, and the Prime Minister has taken industrial relations off, energy off, tax reform off. That is my criticism. So either the government is true to its word, or it's not. And my suggestion, my gratuitous advice to the government is, if you want to really tackle the biggest drop in living standards in the developed world, then you have to be prepared to tackle the tough questions.
All right,
there's two big ones. You make
a fair point there about consistency. It's important, but when you made those comments, Ted O'Brien, you equated being open-minded on tax with being open to changes to the GST. So I'm just trying to get to the bottom what those changes to the GST would look like for you. Are you talking, for example, about raising the GST to 15%, for example?
So, Sarah, my view has been, and I'll restate it tonight, we'll be constructive where we can, critical where we must. When it comes to tax reform, if the government is genuinely interested in dealing with the coalition on tax reform to drive more efficiency into the system, then we're up for that conversation. And so, happy to have that conversation. That's the point I made previously. Now, it was the Treasurer who promised the Australian people this would actually be a round table where everything was discussed. He now has a test before him. The next 3 days is the biggest test Jim Chalmers has ever faced, because he has conceded, and I give him credit for this, Sarah. Jim Chalmers has conceded that his budget is not sustainable.
Let's talk about
stop the spending spree.
Let's talk about good. We've gone to the budget. Let's go there. So, the coalition is committed to much higher defence spending over the next 5 years, $21 billion over the next 5 years. So, where are the savings coming from to pay for that?
Well, I'm glad you went to savings, Sarah, because this is something that you never hear the government actually talking about.
So here you are, Ted O'Brien. What areas are you going to look for savings to fund that $21 billion increase in defence spending?
I don't want to break your heart tonight, Sarah, but believe it or not, I'm not announcing coalition policy.
No, for sure, but you
evening.
must have some idea of which areas you'll be targeting to find that very large amount of money, $21 billion over 5 years for increased defence spending. Where's it coming from?
So there's two things that the government should be doing, and indeed these are two things, Sarah, that answer your question about what we would do. One, the government needs to stop its spending spree, and two, it needs to grow the economic pie. Now, when it comes to stopping the spending spree, there's two key aspects here. Firstly, the government has no fiscal rules in place. You know, when we talk a lot about the RBA and monetary policy, and we talk about the ban for inflation, when you talk fiscal policy, so the way the government runs the budget, the Albanese government has thrown out the rules.
Yes, and this indeed was a policy. This was a policy at the election. But I fear, Ted O'Brien,
Sarah,
if I may, that you're going to lose the audience if we talk about fiscal rules. You took the policy to the election.
Sarah, with all due respect, let me take that risk because you've asked me a question. I'd like to answer it. Number one, this government has thrown out any rules to how to manage the budget. Any rules. Number two, what they need to do is go line by line through all of its key costs and ask themselves whether or not the policy is good policy or bad. If it's bad policy, they should be removing it. Now, the last thing I'd say is there's a basic rule. Households are applying this right across Australia right now. And that is, you've got to live within your means.
So how would you live within the means of the Australian budget? Again, I'm talking about we know about the climbing costs of the NDIS. I choose defence because it's such a large amount of money. I think you're in a position already to give the Australian people some idea of where you're looking to cut spending to put that amount of money on the table for defence.
Again, Sarah, I'm not going to be announcing policy this evening, but fair enough you're asking. The key principle is this: you have to make sure the growth in spending is lower than the growth in the economy. That's the key principle. And then as you go line by line, you can see where savings can be made. Do you want me to give you an example of a really bad Labor policy, for example?
I'm slightly worried, Ted O'Brien. We've got a few things to get through, so let me just jump on to this question.
But I'm trying to give you an example. This goes to what you were talking about,
if
Sarah.
you can do it quickly, go ahead.
Okay. So if you look at Labor's electric vehicle fringe benefit tax exemption, this is a disaster of a policy. It's costing billions to the Australian people. It's 10 times more expensive than what they forecast. And what it does, it effectively allows people on higher incomes to get cheaper EVs than people on lower incomes. It's unfair. It is a misuse of taxpayer money. And the Financial Review today, I believe they had an article putting it over $20 billion in terms of the cost.
So just to bring it back then, Ted O'Brien, to the round table, what policies will you be taking to the round table? What are your proposals along with the hundreds of others that have been put forward? What's yours?
So the two ideas that we are putting forward, Sarah, number one, stop the spending spree, and number two, grow the economic pie. Now, when it comes to the presentation of specific policies, both the Labor government and the coalition opposition are not tabling specific policies. The Treasurer of the country is there to listen, engage, and review the policies and ideas put forward, As the Shadow Treasurer, I will be there to listen, engage and look at the policies put forward.
All right,
but
well,
Jim Chalmers' prism of assessment is very different from mine, Sarah, very different.
We have to wrap it up there, Ted O'Brien, but we'll talk to you again about this. Thank you very much.
Look forward to it.
Thank you very much
Sarah.
indeed
Have
for
a good
joining
night.
us.